It's going to give folks who are just getting into the meeting another 30 seconds or so, and we'll get started. Okay, good evening, everyone. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I do want to note that we have interpretation in English, Spanish, and Portuguese tonight. Everyone will need to join an interpretation channel, including English speakers. We'll be going over those interpretation instructions now. Next slide, please, Grace. Thank you. Oh, back one. Thank you. If you are dialed into tonight's meeting and would like to listen to English, no further action is needed. Unfortunately, Zoom does not have the interpretation option if you are dialed in and need to listen in Spanish or Portuguese, so we encourage you to rejoin on a smartphone or computer. To join interpretation on a desktop or a laptop, you can click on the globe symbol in the bottom right corner of your screen, and then you can select the option for the language you speak. On a smartphone, you can click on the three dots in the bottom right corner of your screen, select the option with the globe symbol, select your language, and then press done in the top right corner. And now I'd like to invite Stephanie to repeat these instructions in Spanish.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a todos. El día de hoy tenemos los servicios de interpretación disponibles en español y en portugués. Next, please. Para utilizar la interpretación desde un computador, tiene que darle clic al globo terráqueo ubicado en la esquina derecha abajo de su pantalla. Luego, seleccione la opción para el lenguaje que usted hable. Next, please. Para seleccionar la interpretación desde un teléfono inteligente, tiene que darle clic al botón de los tres puntos ubicado en la esquina derecha abajo de su pantalla. Luego seleccione la opción con el símbolo del globo. Luego seleccione su lenguaje, presione Done arriba en la esquina derecha de su pantalla.
Thank you, Stephanie. And now I'd like to invite Josie to repeat the instructions in Portuguese.
Thank you. Alô, boa noite todo mundo. Hoje a gente vai ter interpretação simultânea em espanhol e português. Next, please. Para a interpretação em um computador, clique no símbolo de um globo no canto inferior da sua tela. Depois, selecione a opção para o idioma que você fala, português nesse caso. Next, please. Interpretação em um celular smartphone, você vai clicar nos três pontinhos no canto inferior direito da sua tela. Depois, você seleciona a opção com o símbolo de um globo e aí selecione o seu idioma, português, e aperte Done no canto superior direito. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. At this point, we are going to proceed in simultaneous interpretation. Again, regardless of language, please select either English, Portuguese, or Spanish as your language channel. With that, I will turn it over to Christine to begin tonight's meeting.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our all-ward virtual City Hall community meeting. My name is Christine McNulty. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist in the Communications Department for the City of Somerville. Tonight is the final meeting of our series. Over the last month or so, we've held meetings in each of Somerville's wards where the mayor and city staff touch on various topics and provide ward-specific updates related to the ongoing work at City Hall. They'll be doing so again tonight, but with more of a citywide scope as opposed to just a ward-specific. Tonight, you will hear updates from Mayor Ballantyne, our Mobility Division, Participatory Budgeting, Somerville Police, and our Inspectional Services Department. In addition, we have city staff with us tonight who are ready to answer any questions that you may have for them. The represented departments and divisions include 311, Engineering, Somerville's Council on Aging, the Office of Housing Stability, Economic Development, Elections, Public Space and Urban Forestry, Planning and Zoning, Sustainability and Environment, the Somerville Fire Department, the Somerville Arts Council, and the Department of Racial and Social Justice. After all presentations, we will open up to a question and answer segment. Tonight's meeting will close at 8:30 p.m. If we don't get to your question tonight, or if you prefer email for follow-up questions and feedback, please email cm@somervillema.gov and we'll direct your comment to the appropriate department. As mentioned, we have interpretation in Spanish and Portuguese tonight. We ask that presenters and those asking questions to please speak slowly so everyone can participate in the meeting. All recordings of the meeting series will be available online in the coming days on the City TV Government YouTube channel. And now I will quickly go over the instructions for using the raise hand function. To participate in the question and answer segment, please use the raise hand function. When your name is called, you will be prompted to unmute yourself to ask your question. Sure. So to raise your hand, for the first step, navigate to the participants icon. Should be at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and click on it during the meeting. You will find an icon at the bottom of the screen that says raise hand. On Windows, you can press the Alt button plus Y, which is a keyboard shortcut to raise your hand. And if you are using a Mac, you can use the Option plus Y shortcut to raise your hand there as well. If you are using a mobile device, you can raise your hand by clicking More at the bottom of your screen in the right corner. The More icon is these 3 horizontal dots on your screen. You can click on that, and then you can click on Raise Hand when their menu option pops up. If you are dialing in tonight and you would like to raise a question, you can dial *9 to both raise your hand and lower your hand. And with that, I have a few quick city updates before we dive into the main presentation. So a reminder that the presidential election is on Tuesday, November 5th. On this slide, you'll see key dates like the voter registration deadline and early voting dates. All election information can be found at somervillema.gov/elections. Somerville adopted the Community Preservation Act by a vote in the general election in November 2012. A question on the ballot in November 2024 asks whether to increase the surcharge to the maximum of 3%. The CPA program currently generates about $3 million per year with a 1.5% surcharge. With this surcharge increase, this would go up to about $6 million a year. This would more than double the amount of annual matching funds that Somerville receives from the state. Low-income homeowners and seniors can apply for exemption. Roberta Cameron, who is our Community Preservation Act manager, is not here tonight, so we ask that you please email any questions related to the Community Preservation Act to cm@somervillema.gov. Can you go to the next one? One more, I apologize. Thank you so much. Somerville residents ages 16 and older are invited to apply for the Climate Ambassador Program. The program aims to educate residents about climate change and increase the community's capacity to engage in climate action. Learn more about the program and Somerville's climate goals at somervillema.gov/CFA. The Planning and Zoning Department is working to preserve and grow the artist and climate tech industries along Somerville Ave. To achieve this, I apologize, wrong bullet point. The Central Somerville Avenue Public Meeting Series kicks off Monday, October 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. upstairs at Bow Market and via Zoom. The meeting series will have weekly hybrid meetings over the next month. Please review this slide here for additional meeting topics and dates. And I also would like to add that in September, the Brick Bottom Neighborhood Plan was officially adopted after a few years of community outreach and planning. So thank you to everyone who helped participate along the way. On October 9th, the city held a meeting with updates from Mayor Ballantyne, the Somerville Police Department, and the Department of Health and Human Services regarding public safety and homelessness in Somerville. We encourage anyone interested to watch the recording of the meeting by visiting youtube.com/somervillegovtv. Thank you. The Department of Racial and Social Justice is excited to share that the Public Safety for All Task Force, Civilian Oversight Task Force, and Anti-Violence Working Group are finalizing their group reports and policy recommendations. RSJ anticipates sharing the findings and recommendations publicly before the end of 2024. And on this next slide, you can find ways in which you can get involved and stay in touch with RSJ. Next slide, please. Thank you. At home, community members can combat flooding in their neighborhood through our Adopt a Drain program. When you adopt a drain or drains, you commit to caring for a local storm drain of your choice by checking on it and performing light maintenance as needed before and after any heavy rain, wind, or snow. As a bonus, you can also give it a name. And if you look at this slide, you can see a few of our favorites. If you are feeling inspired, you can adopt a drain yourself by visiting somerville.mysticdrains.org. Next slide, please. I would like to note that we have Truck or Treat happening this week in Somerville. It's going to take place Thursday, October 24th at 5 p.m. at City Hall, so 93 Highland Avenue. And if you're looking to see any more upcoming events, you can visit somervillema.gov/calendar. And finally, you can stay up to date with all things City of Somerville by subscribing to our weekly newsletter. You can do this by using the QR code on the slide or by visiting somervillema.gov/subscribe. On this webpage, you'll find a list of other departments that have their own newsletters. We welcome and encourage you to subscribe to any and all that may interest you. So this concludes our quick updates portion, and I would like to now welcome Mayor Ballantyne to begin her presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. And this evening, I'm going to focus on some of the most fundamentally important work that the city does for the community, not just to meet our basic and our most critical needs, but to achieve our most aspirational goals. That's investing in, updating, and maintaining our infrastructure. So what's infrastructure? Infrastructure is all of the facilities and physical systems that serve our community. At the city level, that means anything from roads to buildings to sidewalks to the utilities like water and sewer to our public parks and playgrounds. It also includes smaller but still critical items like manhole covers, streetlights, and more. In short, infrastructure is the built environment that enables us to live our lives. But despite how vitally important infrastructure is, our nation has been neglecting it. Since our country started grading the conditions of our infrastructure, that goes back almost 25 years, the nation has gotten a D or a D+ every year until last year, when it moved up to a C- for the first time. Somerville is no different. We too have significant legacy infrastructure challenges due to decades of underinvestment. So I've made it my priority to accelerate that work. It's not that the previous administrations were willingly underfunding the need in Somerville, though. No, rather that infrastructure is extremely costly and it's time consuming. So our community has had to find new ways to move forward. And we've done that in a number of ways. We've planned ahead to build up our revenue streams and completed years of visioning and planning. We've been smart to bring in community-driven development that creates new tax revenue to fund our needs. We've also improved our bond rating. Strong fiscal management is a central focus of my administration, and that goes hand in hand with making infrastructure projects possible. And last year, the city of Somerville earned a AAA bond rating for the first time ever in its history. And that saves us money by lowering our interest rates on borrowing. And to be clear, we do have to borrow for the larger projects. For example, like our high school, which cost about $280 million. And we've also had to staff up. For example, in the last 7 years, we've increased our infrastructure and asset management staff. Those are the people who work on all these projects, from 8 to 35. And to our community's credit, via these measures, we've been able to start righting the ship. But it's still going to take time and determination and more of those traffic detours, which we all love, to keep moving forward. And when I say we're focused on our infrastructure, this is what it includes. It includes 109 miles of municipal roadways. That's just city roads. That doesn't include the state roads in the city like McGrath or Alewife Brook Parkway or Mystic Avenue. 167 miles of sidewalks, 181 miles of sewer and stormwater pipes, 125 miles of water mains, and 4,802 manhole covers, and 1.6 million square feet of buildings. I won't read the whole slide. There's more, but this just gives you a picture. And I want to zoom into what it means when we talk about 1.6 million square feet of buildings. 3/4 of that space is in our school buildings. The remaining buildings include city buildings like City Hall, police headquarters, and the parking offices, our libraries, our fire stations, and our athletic structures. And a key thing to note, though, is when was this all built? You know, most of it and the major items were built in the 1800s and the early 1900s. That includes our network of roads, many of our buildings, and especially our sewers, many of which are still more than 100 years old. Even our so-called newer buildings like DPW or our traffic and parking offices were built in the 1950s. That's roughly 3/4 of a century ago. There has been an exception. Schools. That has seen a steady and more recent investment. All but 2 schools were built or replaced in the mid-1990s or later. The most recent was Somerville High School, which we are still putting the finishing touches on still today. 2 exceptions are the schools that we're focusing major planning on right now. That's the Winter Hill School, which was built in 1974 using now disapproved of construction methods, concrete, that are failing in similar buildings worldwide. And the Brown School, our oldest building, our oldest school building, was built in 1900. Just imagine, that's when men were still wearing top hats. But even our newer school buildings require maintenance, modernization, and upgrades. And for this reason, I ordered a full evaluation of all our schools as soon as I took office. That became known as our K through 8 master plan, our K being kindergarten through 8th grade. And this is going to guide our work to address the Winter Hill, Brown, and system-wide school building needs. The key thing about older infrastructure and about our community is we are focused on more than just fixing the thing that's been neglected for many years. Rather, our needs, demands, and goals have fundamentally shifted in recent years and decades, and our aspirations have grown. Striving to do more means every project is more complex and takes more time. We don't just repave worn-out roads anymore. We transform them from being just for cars to being safe and easy for vehicles, buses, bikes, car shares, walkers, and rollers of all ages. We don't just rebuild streetscapes and buildings. We expand green space and open space with each project. We don't just replace failed water mains. We build to reduce flooding and sewer backups into our homes and businesses. We plan for the modern priorities like addressing climate change impacts, water pollution, ADA accessibility, and including community input. We build schools to meet modern curriculum needs like lab space, modern vocational training, or appropriate classrooms for neurodiverse students. And we are advancing our climate action goals by also greening up our projects with energy efficiency, fossil fuel reduction, and more. In short, we find ourselves facing the challenge of updating 19th and 20th century infrastructure to meet our 21st century goals. That takes better planning, more creative design, more discussion, more time for construction, and more money. But Somerville has always been up for taking on our toughest challenges. So we're pushing hard to meet our infrastructure needs and our infrastructure goals. That starts with strategic planning and analysis. Strategic plans are our roadmap for bringing our infrastructure into the next century. They are informed by community engagement and values and developed through the deep expertise of our teams, consulting partners, and we've been stepping up analysis, engagement, and planning. Examples include updating our Summer Visions comprehensive plan, our climate forward plan, our flood mitigation plan, our water quality master plan, our bike network plan, and more. Then we work on putting these plans into action. So just to take a look at some of the work underway and recently completed, we have a series of slides that you can review in more detail later in the handouts or online. I won't read off every project listed, and these are just samples. These lists are not complete, and I'll start with our schools because of their central importance. It is our responsibility to ensure our students have schools and resources they need to learn and thrive. Quality facilities are essential to that. Again, our most significant school project right now is Winter Hill. We've been accepted into the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which is initials are MSBA state funding program for the Winter Hill and possibly the Brown needs as well, if the community supports including the Brown. Everyone interested is invited to participate in the community process. This started 10 days ago, but please check it out online. I cannot stress how fortunate we are to be in the MSBA program. This can save us tens of millions of dollars. The total cost of a new school is expected to come in at around $250 million, close to the same cost of our new Somerville High School. This reflects the rising costs since this will be a smaller project. We need state support to both afford this and to ensure we have room left for other needs like roads and public spaces. We are also continually working on other school upgrades, both inside and out, be that playgrounds or new heating and cooling systems. We are also continually assessing pavement conditions and repaving our roads to restore them after the harsh winters. We know how awful it is for you to drive over potholes that throw out your suspension in your car. So in addition to pothole filling, our paving program targets streets in most need of repair. The map here is also online as an interactive map. It shows what we paved recently and what's coming up. The purple streets are now under contract for completion next year. The blue are planned in the next coming 5 years. We also want everyone of every ability to be able to move around and walk, navigate our sidewalks. So in addition to spot sidewalk repairs, we work systematically as well as upgrade full sidewalks for accessibility and safety. When we can, we roll the sidewalks into street projects, which brings us all important cost savings. But because this is Somerville, we don't just repave roads. We plan full streetscape redesigns to meet our community needs. We just completed phase 1 of Highland Ave. I know it seems like it took forever, and that's partly due to the pandemic. It's also because we upgraded the sewers and other underground utilities first before putting down interim paving. Soon we'll start the design process for the full redesign with you. We want to be sure it accounts for the adequate parking, pedestrian and bike safety, climate resiliency, and more. We've got more projects underway for Elm and Beacon, Broadway, Western Pearl Street, Washington Street, and more. And we also recently completed projects on Eastern Pearl Street, Powder House Boulevard, Harlan Street, and more. We recently surveyed our community and in the Public Safety for All survey. And the #1 safety concern raised over and over again was traffic safety. We heard you. My administration has been greatly increasing the pace of traffic calming measures and installations as part of our infrastructure work. We are installing safety features like raised crosswalks, speed bumps, and traffic circles at significantly higher rates than pre-pandemic years. In the pre-pandemic years from 2017 to 19, we did an average of 7 features per year. In the last 2 years, we've averaged 56 features per year. I've made it my priority to accelerate this work because lives are at stake, because you raised the concern, and because I share your concern. We are also continually working to upgrade our more than 80 parks, playgrounds, and fields where we recreate, gather, and play. Projects can also be large, like the construction of Revis Field next to the high school, or small, like the recent expansion of Glen Park Community Garden. We are also doing leading edge work to develop privately owned public spaces known as POPs, P-O-P-S. When new developments come in, we require the large projects to provide new outdoor space that we can all use, and we help design those. And finally, we don't just build above ground when we construct green space. We add water retention features under every park wherever possible, and it certainly works. When I was a counselor, I used to regularly receive heart-wrenching phone calls and emails from residents living around Union Square whose homes and businesses have flooded. After the water retention holding tank of 1.2 million gallons of water was installed under Lincoln Park, most of those calls have stopped. Our city buildings also need attention. Our firefighters deserve quality facilities, and our residents need fire stations that best serve our neighborhoods. We are currently building the city's first new fire station in a generation over at Assembly Square. Next month, we start another, or I shouldn't say next month, we actually have been starting it this week, is another really important project, and that City Hall will at long last get a new slate roof, and the clock tower will be repaired. Our water and sewer systems may be mostly underground and out of sight, but it's easily our most critical infrastructure. We cannot function without clean water and proper wastewater systems. And with increasing temperatures, we must reduce flood risks. We also have a federal administrative order for stormwater and a federal sewer consent decree that requires upgrades in our combined sewer system. Basically, in lay terms, that means the federal government is telling the city of Somerville, you need to do these upgrades, as they are with many municipalities around the country. If we don't address water and sewer needs, we risk flooding, pollution, health and sanitation risk, and federal fines. Projects underway include monumental efforts like the Poplar Street Pump Station, which will add sewer capacity for roughly 2/3 of the city. The Poplar Street Pump Station, for those of you who don't know, is over in the Brick Bottom neighborhood, which is across from Target in the eastern part of the city. The Mystic River Outfall and Sewer Separation Project will add similar capacity for the remaining western end of the city. Other more targeted projects like Morrison Ave flood mitigation or Central Broadway water main upgrades are also underway. When you reduce these projects to a few rows of text on a slide, it's easy to just miss how big they are. So I just wanted to take a moment to let us gaze at the work underway in this photo, and that's at the Poplar Street Pump Station, again in the Brick Bottom neighborhood. Those little yellow figures are workers. That pump station, among other things, is designed to prevent horrible flooding like this on Dane Street in 2019. That flooding that can destroy your cars, cause $1,000 of damage to homes and businesses, put sewage in our basements, pollute our waterways, and endanger us during extreme storms. That's one reason we are making monumental investments in our water and sewer systems. Last on the list is a shout out. It goes to our teams who have been working on replacing all of our lead water service lines to keep poison out of our drinking water. We are the national leader on this. Somerville will have eliminated all known lead service connections by next year. The MWRA, where we get our water, in fact, has been asking our staff to help teach other communities how to do this now that they are also new federal requirements for this. I do also want to share that all of this work takes time and involves many steps. This chart is simplified, but the typical project requires assessment, capital and fiscal planning to be sure we can pay first for the design and then for the project itself. Design, community input, state regulated processes for procuring contractors and supplies, scheduling and management, construction with constant communication and impact reductions for our residents. And once done, we have to maintain what we build. That's why we measure most project schedules in years, not months. And an example of this is we started planning for rebuilding the high school in 2012. Today, 12 years later, we are still working to complete the multi-year punch list to close out the remaining finished work. And of course, managing costs is also the root of why infrastructure is neglected nationally. And I'm not willing to kick the can down the road on these critical needs, however. So we are working to plan carefully for bonding, borrowing, seeking alternative revenues such as from the federal and the state funding and new tax revenue growth. To give you a sense of the numbers, the Somerville Avenue Utility Streetscape project was $72 million. The Spring Hill sewer separation is $38 million. And as I noted, Somerville High School is about $280 million. And the Poplar Street pump station we looked at a moment ago is about $130 million. And to break it down, a little bit smaller is sidewalk costs. Guess how much a sidewalk costs for 1 mile on one side of the street? $1.5 million. Paving the roadway for 1 mile is also $1.5 million. So accordingly, a full street reconstruction is in the order of $4.5 million per mile. So for 2 sidewalks and for the street. And that just gives you a sampling. With all of the work we have to do across the city, we want to ensure that we are working as efficiently as possible, both in terms of time and money. We have to make our limited dollars go further. One way to do this is by only digging once. That means we coordinate with all our city teams, departments, and our external partners like Eversource Gas to ensure essential underground work is completed first before we pave a road or build a new streetscape. This means that the community can enjoy safer, newly paved roads without having to worry that they will be disturbed and dug up again by major utility work. It also makes sense in terms of lower costs. We don't have to pay to repair the damage that would cause. Another way we work more efficiently is by pursuing multiple goals within a single project. For example, the Spring Hill Sewer Separation Project is primarily a stormwater management project. Its main goal is to reduce flooding in the city, reduce water pollution, and modernize our underground infrastructure. But a project of this scale can give us an opportunity to reimagine the streetscape above ground according to our goals and aspirations too. So we plan to build in additional features like ADA accessibility, adding new greenery to the project, and making sure that the streets are more accessible and sustainable. To sum it up, it's good to step back and reflect one more time. Why are we doing this work? Why are we investing our dollars in infrastructure? Why are we causing traffic delays to update our sewers? It's simple. We're creating a better quality of life. We're building not only to meet the practical needs like clean drinking water and safe streets, we are building for right now and for future generations so people can thrive in Somerville today and tomorrow. So that's all. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to answering your questions during the Q&A process.
Thank you so much, Mayor Ballantyne. Next up, I would like to welcome Brad Rawson, who is the director of our mobility department.
Thanks, Christine. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brad Rawson. I'm a Somerville resident. I'm a proud parent in our excellent Somerville Public Schools, and I have the privilege of leading a small team called the Mobility Division. Our work in the Mobility Division includes community engagement, planning, design, finance, data analysis, state agency relationships, private development permitting, and more. We have two major areas of focus. The first is safety. The second is climate action. Tonight's presentation will focus on safety. So street safety is one of the most common concerns we hear from our residents. Our residents are constantly telling us that they feel threatened by speeding drivers, distracted drivers, big trucks on our tight little streets that are so full of pedestrians and people biking. We all observe crashes and near misses in our daily and weekly routines. You may have seen an important article published by the Boston Globe this week describing the crisis in safety on the streets of the city of Boston and some of the common strategies that cities like Boston, Somerville, and many others are using to improve safety on our streets. I'm happy and proud to report to you that based on years of Somerville advocacy, the city has really improved our project delivery processes. We are taking bold action to save lives on our streets. The pictures on this slide show examples from all 7 of Somerville's electoral wards of projects that have been under construction and installation in 2024. You see examples like raised crosswalks, speed humps, curb extensions, and separated bike lanes. These are life-saving infrastructure, and they are common around the country and around the world. Next slide, please. Mayor Ballantyne showed this graph earlier, but it's so important that I think we can repeat it. Folks, in 2019, 3 Somerville residents were killed in hit-and-run crashes, killed by speeding drivers while they crossed our streets in marked crosswalks. These tragic crashes motivated Somerville residents, elected officials, and staff to demand more of each other. We decided as a community that we cannot accept a status quo that involves terrible, life-altering crashes as routine or inevitable. We have the power to save lives, and it involves the work that the mayor described, improving the pace of construction of life-saving traffic calming infrastructure. I'm really, really proud of this graph, and it's important that you all know that there are a variety of city departments working every day to continue this trajectory until all Somerville residents feel safe in all of our neighborhoods. Folks, routine repaving projects have been reimagined now as opportunities to build speed humps to slow down speeding drivers. Routine sidewalk reconstruction projects have become opportunities to add raised crosswalks and curb extensions. I'd like to say a big thank you to our residents, to our advocates, to our elected officials for supporting us in this urgent work. Next slide, please. Here's an important question. Is our work delivering the intended results? Here are 2 examples of data that we use to make sure that we are on track. It's not just about what we build. It's about, are we delivering measurable safety outcomes. On the left side of your screen is a graph that shows the total number of reported crashes in Somerville for the last decade or so. And it's incredible when you think that in an average year, we could have 600 or 800 crashes in our little 4 square mile city. You see a big, big dip between 2019 and 2020. As you would expect, this reflects the lockdown period of the COVID-19 pandemic, where driving behavior was really lower than typical. Since that time, as the economy has reopened, there's more and more cars, more and more driving behavior. But I'm really proud to report that even as things have gotten back to something approaching normal, the number of crashes reported on our streets is well below pre-pandemic rates. The second graph on your screen illustrates the crashes that we're really most concerned about, those that involve people walking, wheeling, and biking. Again, you see a really encouraging trend line in this line graph, going from approximately 40 or even 50 crashes per year involving pedestrians down to 20 or 30 as our traffic calming program continues to grow. Folks, there is more work to be done. These numbers are good, but they're not good enough. We handle so many calls from 311, so many referrals from our city council partners, and most of us are Somerville residents, and we're experiencing this just like you are. So there's still work to be done. Next slide, please. As the city has scaled up our traffic calming program, we've also invested in public information and community engagement. We do more outreach using diverse techniques to serve our diverse population. This slide includes examples of educational websites we use to connect people to our work. The first image on the left is a city webpage that describes the different types of traffic calming treatments that have become increasingly common on our streets. And it helps inform our residents of why city engineers and staff might select or recommend a raised crosswalk versus a speed hump on a different street. The second image is an interactive map that you can use to anticipate upcoming projects. Even with the city's process improvements in recent years, there is still far more demand for our work than there are resources available. One of the hardest parts of my job is to tell our residents that we're going to get to your safety concern, but it might take a couple of years. An interactive map like this one helps give folks fair expectations about how long it can take us to move through design, community engagement, financing, and construction. But please know that we are working in every Somerville neighborhood to improve safety. Next slide, please. So our final slide tonight will focus on some specific ways to get more involved in this life-saving work. Over the past month, city staff have started community engagement for safety upgrades that are coming in 2025 and 2026. We typically plan 1 to 2 years ahead for our large-scale projects. You see examples of promotional posters for a project called the Elm Beacon Connector, which is focused on Elm Street, mostly in the Porter Square neighborhood, as well as our Western Pearl Street reconstruction project, which is focused on the section of Pearl Street around the Gilman Square neighborhood. You can connect more information on these and many other projects using the city's Summer Voice public information and engagement platform. Simply use any search engine, Summer Voice, SOMERVOICE, all projects. You'll find these two and many, many more. I also want to call folks' attention to a couple of promotional and informational newsletters that different city departments use. The first is the monthly Mobility Division newsletter. This newsletter focuses on project development processes, community engagement, design decisions. Right now, we have members of our team doing a community meeting over on the west side of the city. Last night, we had a community meeting, walking meeting in one of our neighborhoods. Tomorrow night, different meeting, different neighborhood. There is so much going on. By signing up for the Mobility Division newsletter, you can help stay engaged on the issues that matter to you. So please use the link online, or again, use any search engine for Somerville Mobility Newsletter. The second thing I'd like to call your attention to is our construction newsletter, which is managed by our engineering division and our communications department. This newsletter is focused more on the 1 week and 1 month look ahead for active construction. The mayor noted that many of these infrastructure projects can be very disruptive. We appreciate everybody's patience and tolerance through these processes. But if you are not signed up for our construction newsletter, you're missing important opportunities to know when noise, vibration, traffic and detour, water shutoff, and other realities of construction could impact your neighborhood. Please do follow the link on your screen or search Somerville Construction Newsletter. In summary, folks, I'd like to thank all of our diverse city workforce departments and partners who work on the Safe Streets work. Although Mobility Division is speaking tonight, this is the work of many hands. The city's engineering division, our parking department are some of our most important collaborators. The city's fire department and our Department of Public Works are critical operational partners and work with us every day to make sure that our Safe Streets designs can serve emergency response needs, street sweeping, snow plowing, and many other operational requirements. The city's finance department, our procurement team, and our communications departments all play crucial roles behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, we also want to thank you. We are transforming the way that folks can get around, and we recognize that this can be disruptive. When you challenge the status quo, it can be uncomfortable. Do not hide from that fact. We ask your patience and your forbearance as we work to make sure that every Somerville kid can walk to a K-8 public school in their neighborhood, that all of us can walk or wheel to the grocery store, to the park, to the bus, to the subway, to the faith community and cultural institutions. We've got a lot of work to do, but let's do it together. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Brad. Next up, we are going to hear from Megan about participatory budgeting. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Megan Huckenthaler, and I work with the City of Somerville as a budget analyst in the finance department. Today, I will be talking about cycle 2 of our participatory budgeting program. Participatory budgeting is a democratic process in which we ask residents to submit, review, and vote on their own ideas to improve the city. We began and completed our first cycle of $1 million of funding last fall and are excited for our second one. On the image, you can see examples of a few projects that were submitted and examples of winning projects. We funded 5 in our first cycle, additional funding for bike lanes, bus shelters and real-time signage, additional funding for Big Belly trash can upgrades throughout the city to enhance rodent control, shade structures, and improving food access for our most in need residents. The cycle currently is asking residents to submit their ideas online at somervillema.gov/PB, where you can submit an idea now through November 20th. This opened at the website on September 20th, and we are just over halfway through the submission window. We are asking for ideas to be one-time expenses, so excluding things such as salaries for additional staff, asking that ideas are able to be implemented on public property, such as parks, streets, sidewalks, city buildings, and as creative as our residents are. You can also volunteer to be a member of the review process, who will sort through all of these submitted ideas, talk with city staff on their feasibility, and score them to see which ones should make the final ballot of the 20 best ideas, which will then be presented for a public vote in the spring. There is no knowledge of budgeting or city expertise required to be a volunteer. We will have you learn from city staff, provide you with materials, and allow you to engage with other residents on what would be the most beneficial projects for our city. In our first cycle last year, we got over 900 ideas on the website, which was a very exciting mark to reach. And for cycle 2, I'm hoping we can break into 1,000 ideas. Thank you, and please submit ideas if you have them.
Thank you so much, Megan. I hope that tonight you leave here feeling inspired and everyone can submit a bunch of ideas for the budgeting. Next up, we have Captain Jeff DiGregorio from the Somerville Police Department.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff DiGregorio. I'm a captain with the Somerville Police Department. Starting off, just want to talk to you a little bit about some crime trends over the last 12 months. Overall, citywide, we have seen an increase of 10%. Part 1 crimes. What is a Part 1 crime, you may ask? Some examples are breaking and entering a motor vehicle, aggravated assault, robbery, and larceny. I will say a lot of these property crimes, larceny crimes, are attributed to retail theft, especially the Assembly Square area. But we have made significant arrests in this for this issue over the last few weeks. So what do we do about this? Some of our responses. So our area cars and other resources are deployed based on patterns, hotspots, and feedback from the community. Our officers are made aware of these patterns through communications as well as direct-to-patrol books. And a lot of that information is community driven. If somebody has an issue, a certain address, certain business, they call us, we can actually put that into our book and direct officers to hit on these locations periodically through their shift. We also increase residents' awareness of crime through some of our social media channels, as well as citywide meetings and board meetings such as this one. And we can go to the next slide. So transparency is very important to us. And in collaboration with RSJ and communications, we launched this open data portal, which you will have access to crime reports, our calls for service, traffic citations, and motor vehicle crashes. I will say this isn't real-time information. It's about 30 days. But we need that lag to make sure we vet everything for privacy reasons. And as far as investigations go, a lot of active investigations, we just have to make sure that we're not putting out too much information that could jeopardize that. But I encourage you to go onto the website, go into the portal. I think a lot of questions that people have, they can find it right here. So in continuing with that theme of transparency, you can also sign up for citywide alerts on the Somerville.ma.gov/alerts on the city website. And some of these alerts, included when we have missing people, when there's shots fired incidents, and other emergency alerts and updates. Again, it's, we try to, along with privacy and investigation, we can't put out real-time data all the time, but we try to balance that with being transparent and giving the community as much as we can. And go to the next slide, please. Highlights on some of our community engagement efforts. We're trying to, as much as we can, bring back community policing. So we do have a 3-person unit, and they go to these community events. They do a lot of things with Council on Aging, the Homeless Coalition. They do about 30 events per month. We've also brought back National Night Out, which was led by the police department. And we haven't been able to do this in, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years. And we took to Dilboy Stadium, and it was a great event. I was there. a lot of different vendors, a lot of different activities for the kids. So it really was a success. One of the other events we had was the Junior Police Academy, and that was in collaboration with Parks and Rec. It was 5th to 8th grade. They got to go to a Red Sox game and learn some CPR and some other different skills. Again, great success. We've been doing that for a while. And then finally, just community meetings like this. I participated in most of the ward meetings as well as this, and I will say it really helps just talking to people and getting real-time feedback. So I think it's very good for both of us, for the community as well as our department. So to get in touch with us, you don't have to just call 911. We do have other things. We're trying to make a social media presence. We do have Facebook, X, I think, Twitter, Instagram. We do have a website. We try to update this regularly. I will say it's not monitored 24/7. We just don't have staff to do that, but I encourage you to reach out to us. Somebody will get back to you. You can also submit a crime tip anonymously. The information's right there. And we also, I will admit, I didn't know we had an app, but we do have an app. So I encourage you to download that as well. And then I think finally, we are looking to hire. We're actively recruiting. I'm actually going through the process right now of hiring new officers. I will say I've never seen a challenge. I've been on 24 years, and it was kind of unheard of to not have candidates or people that really wanted this job. But I do encourage you, if you know anybody that wants a great career, like I said, I've been here 24 years. I have no regrets. We do have great benefits, great pay. It is really a wonderful job, and you can do a lot of good with it. And we do have a pension, which most places don't. So if you know anybody that's looking to, be an officer, or is even interested, just reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we're going to welcome Colin from the Inspectional Services Department.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Ziegler. I'm the Environmental Health Manager for the City of Somerville. I work in the Inspectional Services Department within the Health Division. And I work with some really excellent people. So I just want to quickly shout out to all of our inspectors who conduct inspections, who do enforcement work, as well as our staff who help support all of the great efforts that we have put into rodent control in the recent years. It's really amazing to see some of the progress we've made from a small office of, one person trying to handle rodent issues to now having 4 dedicated staff within ISD attempting and working to manage the rodent issue throughout the city. So I just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of them. Just for some context, the rodent problem is pervasive throughout many cities in the world. I recently attended the New York City Rat Summit, which brought in experts from many different places, many larger cities and backgrounds. Everyone's dealing with this. And it appears that Somerville is really leading the way on a lot of these issues in terms of the structures we have in place for enforcement, the education and materials that we distribute, as well as some of the experiments that we run with different kinds of baits and trapping and management. One of which is our rodent fertility control study that we are doing in partnership with the city of Cambridge through a regional health grant. We're doing this with Evolve Bait and Bell IQ boxes. So we're tracking actually entrances and exits within the boxes to get an idea of colony size. And we're tracking the amount of bait that they eat. And they are eating a ton. The city had previously tested birth control in 2016 through 2018 with Contrapest. It wasn't very effective. It had a lot of issues with freezing and thawing and not becoming palatable, and issues with constantly having to refill it. The rats really didn't want to go near it. This stuff is completely different. These cheesy textured sausages are getting consumed at a fairly alarming rate, but that's good. We want them taking high dosages. We want the target population of female rats to be consuming this birth control to help bring down the cycles of litters that contribute to one of the major issues of rats is that they reproduce so quickly. It's hard to catch up. So I just want to share a little bit about the rodent control study. It's currently at the Somerville High School. We're looking at some other locations, but we'll keep everyone updated during the Special Issues Committee for Rodents, as well as if you just call our office. We're happy to talk rats. So next slide, please. I also wanted to touch on the updates to the residential assistance program. Again, this is one of the first of its kind in the nation. We provide free rodent control assistance to properties 3 units or less. Initially, we had just been doing 3 weeks of treatment and consultation. We took feedback from the public and said, they wanted more. They wanted more engagement with our inspectors, with our pest control technicians, and they wanted, different options. And we have heard that. We have updated our contract with B&B Pest Control. And now you get 2 months of service. We have altered our bait to reduce the risk of secondary poisoning deaths for owls and hawks by using a vitamin D concentrate, T-Rad block. And then we also offer alternative treatments that are not using poison or traps, such as carbon monoxide and dry ice treatments. So the program is going for a quality over quantity format, and we're already starting to see some results in the neighborhoods that have been hardest hit by rodent activity. So we're very excited to see how the program develops and as we troubleshoot some issues that we might have had and get more people to participate. The more people that join up, the better results we're going to see in our neighborhoods. Which is the final thing I want to touch on today. Fall is an excellent time for you to do rodent prepping and control. Do your landscaping, inspect your property. They're going to start cozying up sooner than later. So please reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want to do a community walkthrough. We're happy to do so with you and your neighbors. You can't do this together. We can't do this together. It takes collective action and meaningful action on a consistent basis. So please reach out. And thanks again for all your time. Looking forward to hearing the questions tonight.
All right. Thank you so much, Colin. And thank you so much for everyone that presented tonight. We are now going to transition to the question and answer segment of the evening. I know I said this earlier, but if you would like to participate in the question and answer segment, please use the raise hand function. When your name is called, you will be prompted to unmute yourself to ask your question. The mayor will be fielding questions first, and then city staff are welcome to provide any additional information that they can. So feel free to raise your, okay, attendees. All right, Sarah Ann, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Hi. Okay, I'm here to, oh, you disappeared. Can you see me? Okay, hi. I am here.
I can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, now I can see you. I'm here on behalf of the pet store on Summer Street, Scritches and Boops. I'm here to support Michelle, the owner. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Can you
you.
see me? Okay. I'm here to support Michelle, the owner of Scritches and Boops, the pet store on Summer Street. Her business has been severely impacted. We can't even get there. I can't walk there. I can't park there. I can't drive there. She is a new business in Somerville. She's been there for less than a year. Her business, Scritches and Boops, has been like the highlight, I would say, like the highlight of my life for the last year. I would be so sad if her business closed. I love her so much. I love the store. I just want her to stay open, and she can't stay open if no one can drive to her store or walk to her store. Like, she lets the dogs come in and you can't go in if you can't walk your dog there because the sidewalks are closed because of the construction. It's been a nightmare for her and for all of us. Like, it's really upsetting. It makes me so sad. It's just been horrible. It's just been awful. And I think this is unacceptable. I think Somerville should have let her know know when the construction was happening. Sorry, I have anxiety. It's just been really awful. It's also been awful for my therapy center, which is just down the street from her, on Summer Street. Also, Riverside Community Care. I've been like 20 minutes late to therapy. I can't get there. I can't get there. I drive around in circles. I allow myself like an extra 15 minutes to get there, and I'm still 20 minutes late for therapy. It's been really hard on the therapist and everyone who works there. My current therapist is leaving because of all of this. So I'll be assigned a new therapist there that like is giving me a lot of anxiety. But yeah, she's literally leaving because of this construction. Like this construction is affecting local businesses. It's affecting everyone. And I really think Somerville should have done better for the local businesses and the community members, and especially like new businesses like Scritches and Boops. Michelle has worked so hard to make her business for the community, and the city is working against her, and that's just not fair. And it just breaks my heart. And I want her to stay open. I want my therapy center to stay open. It's like a 3-story center. It's really big. It serves children, families, community members. It serves so many people, and it gives people jobs. But now my therapist is leaving her job because of the construction. So I'll give other people time, but I can't even see anyone. I hope, did you all hear that?
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you. Oh, no, okay, thank you.
Sarah Ann, thank you for your question. Thank you for supporting our small businesses and caring about them. I am actually going to pass the response over to Brian Postlewaite, our Director of Engineering. Thanks, Brian.
Hello, good evening. This is Brian Postlewaite, Director of Engineering. First off, I want to just empathize with you and the business owner and all of the residents. Construction is hard. It's hard for us to execute the work perfectly for everybody involved. These construction projects are amazingly complicated. But I know that is very little consolation to the businesses and the residents who live in the communities that are going through the construction. There is no other way to bring our infrastructure up to the level that we demand of it to function on a reliable basis, day in and day out, without this level of construction. And we are constantly trying to work with residents, with business owners, with ward counselors, as well as the administration, as well as all the other departments in the city to recognize that construction is challenging and try to find out the best ways that we can to reduce that negative impact while still moving forward with the positive benefit that we need to attain by executing the construction in the first place.
Hi, you literally you haven't said anything. This is unhelpful.
I think the next piece that we should be going at is understanding the specific concerns. We have a team that is focused on this effort. No doubt you've been interacting with our project manager, Dan Amelin, and Jesse Moose, our construction liaison. And if you haven't personally, I'm confident that the owner of Skitches and Boops has. And they have been working as best they can to make this as smooth as possible. But this is right in the middle of probably one of the most complicated construction areas that we have right now in the city. We have a long track record with working with other businesses in comparable situations. I can't get into the specifics because I don't really understand the specifics of this particular business. But absolutely happy to go into it further. And if you don't feel like our project manager and our construction liaison is able to provide you the answers and results that you're looking for, absolutely please reach out to us. If you're not getting through to construction at Somerville MA, don't hesitate to reach out to engineering at Somerville MA, which comes directly to me, and we can try to find out what the solution to your problem is.
Thank you, Brian. I also want to mention that our Director of Economic Development, Rachel McCarty, is also on this call. So she will take down the specific information and can give the business support, small business support to Scritches and Boots.
Thank you so much for the question. Thank you as well for the answers. And next up, we have Michelle.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you, Sarah, and for everyone that's on this call, including you, Madam Mayor. I am the owner of Scritches and Boops. I was expecting to do this before somebody else came on for me, so excuse me for being upset. I come to you today as a 15-year resident of Somerville, who's also the owner of a 1-year-old small business located in Union Square. I chose Somerville to open my business for multiple reasons. As a resident, because I love this city. As a dog owner, because I knew there was a void in the city that needed filling, and that we haven't had a comprehensive community-driven pet retail business in years. And as a 20-year marketing veteran with extensive experience in branding, business development, market research, and communication. Now, instinctually, as a resident dog owner, I knew the community needed and wanted. I knew what it needed and wanted. But as a good business person, I dug in to make sure that this made sense first. As of spring 2023, Somerville's public records showed 1,800 licensed dogs. But nationwide studies show that tells a tiny fraction of the story. A national study in 2018 shows that only 23% of dogs are licensed. So by that, Somerville should have around 7,000. However, an even more recent Forbes study in 2022 found that approximately 44% of households have at least one dog, and that 29% of households have at least one cat. Now, you may wonder why I'm saying all this, but that states that the US Census states Somerville has over 35,000 households, which would put the Somerville pet population at around 15,000 dogs and 10,000 cats, with no real comprehensive community-driven pet retail business to support them. Now, I chose the location I did, 62C Summer Street, because of its Union Square location, where the median household income is over $104,000 a year. It has the money to support this. And its proximity, walking and both foot and paw traffic to a popular dog recreation area. I'm 1.5 blocks from Nunziato Dog Park. So when I was looking for spaces, I considered all of that, foot, paw, and car traffic. And I also considered construction projects. I spoke to the construction crews in the area in summer of 2023 before I signed my lease. And I was assured the project and its impact in the area we'd be looking at it being wrapped up by end of spring 2024, which is untrue. Now, I ran my numbers before opening and they made sense. And even after opening, they made sense. I was not only hitting targets, but surpassing them. And by this past May, I'd realized a 60% growth in revenue from January. Okay, I expected a slight plateau over summer. Okay, summer travel. But people were still discovering me. People were still around. So I shouldn't have plummeted. I did not expect to have my traffic dry up and sales drop by more than 50%. And it quickly became evident as I ran into my past customers elsewhere around Somerville and Cambridge that it wasn't summer travel keeping them away. It was the sewage separation project and other roadwork that had encroached upon my store's immediate area in June and had not moved. These customers told me they'd been forced to change their patterns, that the noise, dust, debris, vibration, and increasingly untraversable conditions of the streets and sidewalks had made it impossible for them to get in. Now, I reached out to construction teams for months, starting in June, just saying, Give me, just stop in and give me actual details. Give me real details, specific, okay, this work is going to start on this date and it's going to end on X date. So I can do business planning. Because if I can't do business planning, I can't do anything. I can't plan for an event. I can't buy inventory for an event and then have the event not be able to happen. Because like this past Friday, when I walked up to my store and the entire front doorway was excavated and blocked by a 4-foot deep trench that I didn't know about at the hour I needed to open. Now, everybody knows, the construction team around there knows I am not open on Mondays and Tuesdays. And that I opened the rest of the week at 11 a.m. So that work was happening at 11 a.m. and I couldn't open until 3 p.m. that day. And that's not the first time I haven't been able to open up on time or even in general. That negatively impacts my bottom line and that impacts my customers' experiences. I'm not happy. In August, I reached out to Kristen Strezzo for help because I wasn't getting anywhere. I was getting circular, pardon my language, but it's been bullshit. Everything I've been getting is just these scripts, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I'm sorry, it's disruptive for everyone. It's inconvenient for everyone. You know what's disruptive? When I have to figure out what bill gets paid this month. When I have to beg someone for a personal loan, because now I know with a small business, there are certain things you need to figure out when you don't know them before. You have to figure out, how to market that specific community. You have to figure out what your cash flow looks like, what, how you're going to order properly for, what people want and when. But you aren't told how to navigate a 4.5-month roadwork project that basically steps on your throat and makes it impossible for you to do business and for your community to come in. I have tried to talk to the business economic development people, Patricia, same. It took her a month to get back to me, and it was the same circular, we know it's inconvenient. We know it's all just the same script over and over again. And I am not the only small business affected. The hair salon next to me, he is deeply affected. He's lost long-term customers because they can't make it in. He relies on car traffic. I rely on foot and paw traffic. And I know there are other businesses like my own where people who are much quieter than I am. But if this roadwork and the city's inability to actually have a tangible, actionable, right now plan to help us as we are choking and we are drowning. If I'm going to go down, if I'm going to lose my business because of this, I am going to go down loud, and I'm going to make sure that future businesses do not go down too. So I want to know, Madam Mayor, what are you and your team doing to support the small businesses that are not just inconvenienced by this road work, but that are dying?
Michelle, thank you. I'm so sorry that you've had to experience this. I know construction is really hard. I do realize that our economic development team and Patricia, as you said, has gotten back to you. We've worked with you during COVID. I will talk to my economic development team after this meeting to see what else we can do with supporting and the work. I will just add, look to Brian to see if you can add any more information on timeline, and we will get back to you in the next day.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as timeline, the work that we have left to do is going to be carrying us through much of the spring. The work right now is progressing from the School Street intersection, which I believe is right near your business, and moving on to and continuing on down the street to Bow Street. I would like to share my email with you. Well, I already shared that, but I would like to get an email correspondence with you. It looks like my team has been trying to reach you and has been unsuccessful over the past couple weeks, and that may be on our end. But I want to figure out how to get in touch with you so we can continue this conversation.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Kevin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking my call and letting me join the meeting. My heart, I just want to say my heart goes out to the business owner. I live in her neighborhood, and I will endeavor to frequent your store tomorrow with my 112-pound Newfoundland and support your store. My comment is of a very different nature. There's been a lot of discussion about making the street safer for bicyclists, making the street safer for cars to go slower, but really there's been a lack of making streets safer for pedestrians from the bicyclists, from the e-scooters, from the food delivery scooters. I'm a person who has been hit by a bicyclist in a crosswalk while having the crosswalk light with the person going the wrong way. Even this morning while crossing the street with my son-in-law and 10-month-old infant grandchild, an e-scooter went right through the light as we were going through the crosswalk. Bicyclists daily ride on the sidewalks despite the new bike pass. I have been yelled at by a bicyclist to get off the sidewalk out of his way in front of Conway Park. Yelled back and said, "There's a bike path, please use it." The bicyclists and the e-scooters and the e-bikes feel that they have the right to not only the bike path, but the crosswalks. Crosswalks should be for pedestrians only. I noticed that Cambridge has been cracking down on the bicyclists that are running lights, running stop signs. But I feel there's not being enough done in Somerville to protect pedestrians from the bicyclists, from the e-scooters, from the e-Vespa type scooters. They are everywhere, and they feel that they own the streets. I love what's being done with the bike pass, but that's not stopping them from using the sidewalks and just barreling through people trying to use the crosswalks in the sidewalks. People who are walking, if you get hit by one of these e-bikes that's doing 30 and 40 miles an hour, someone is going to get killed. It's not just cars that are causing the problems. It's also these people on these cycles. So I would love to hear the mayor's response. I have sent 3 messages to the mayor's office over the last several months with only the automated message. No, even though I get the message says we'll get back to you in 3 to 5 days, I have never had a response. I only recently sent a message to the new police chief, and hopefully I'll get a response from him. I have heard back from our ward councilor, but he has an inability to affect the situation. Only even yesterday, I watched a bicyclist come down Central Street, past Cleveland Street, past the church, going the wrong way, and cars had to, pull off the side for them coming down the middle of the street. The streets are not just owned by the bicyclists, the e-bikes, the e-scooters. So I'll stop there and love to hear the mayor's response on what she's going to do and what the police department is going to do to make pedestrians safe on the sidewalks. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin, for your question. I'm sorry to hear that you got hit in the crosswalk. That is unacceptable. I'm actually going to let our Director of Mobility talk about the detail, but did want to highlight the fact that in the city of Somerville, we do have a pedestrian transit advisory committee. They meet monthly to be able to address the concerns that you are specifically talking about, that we're taking a holistic approach and that all our departments are taking a holistic approach when they put in treatments. And I believe also Brad can talk about the enforcement and what we are doing and what the police is doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Kevin, thanks for your comments. Thanks for your question. I'm sorry for your experience. And I want to empathize and validate what you're saying. We hear from many of our residents exactly the kinds of challenges you are describing. Somerville's not alone in this. Cambridge, Boston, and most cities across North America are struggling with rules of the road, common courtesy, and safety behaviors on shared use paths like the community path, as well as on regular urban streets, given the revolution in e-commerce, in the electric scooter industry, the proliferation of biking and of e-bikes specifically. I think it's really important to note that the Somerville Police Department does do education and enforcement activities, trying to get people biking to abide by the rules of the road, to stop at red lights, to stop at stop signs, to yield to pedestrians in marked crosswalks. We use stenciling and signage in business districts at accessible curb ramps to try to make sure that people biking know that biking is actually illegal on Somerville sidewalks in our business districts like Union Square, where it sounds like you may live. In addition to those tools, we work on education and outreach to try to make sure that folks do know how to behave and how to ride safely, how to yield in crosswalks. But this challenge has become magnified in recent years. And I think it's important to note that all of us, no matter how we get around, we can choose to be selfish behind the wheel or on the seat of a bicycle when we approach a crosswalk and we see a pedestrian. I myself ride the bus, ride a bicycle, and drive in this city. And it does frustrate me at times when I see selfish behavior, unsafe behavior from users of different modes, whether that's drivers or people biking. We have not figured this out yet, but I think it's important to note that Somerville Police Department has been deploying resources, and this can be unpopular. The city does take a fair bit of criticism from advocates and regular residents who actually want that enforcement resource to be dedicated towards people driving, because the sense is that motor vehicles, cars, and trucks are more dangerous. But again, Captain DiGregorio can describe some of the work that his team has been doing, if that's helpful. I just wanted to empathize and make sure you knew this is very much on the city's radar. We are studying what's happening around the country, how signage, pavement markings, street design, outreach and education materials can reduce bad behavior by all parties. Captain?
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Just to kind of reiterate what you're saying is we do have a dedicated traffic unit, and we do have grants where we go out and specifically enforce bicycle safety, pedestrian safety. While it is primarily educational, we have cited and can cite bicyclists. I live in Medford and almost hit a scooter going about 30 miles an hour through a stop sign the wrong way. So I totally see where you're coming from. Myself just driving and seeing whether it's a pedestrian, whether it's a bicyclist, whether it's a motorist. It's somewhat chaotic sometimes. And unfortunately, the police can't be everywhere all the time. But I just want you to know that we take this all very seriously. We are being very proactive about this because you're not the only person with very similar complaints, and rightfully so. Myself in a crosswalk have almost been hit by a scooter, by a bicyclist, by a car. So I just, overall, we're looking at safety and education, but that enforcement acts, that tool is always available to us. And sometimes that's what we have to do. But I just wanted to let you know that we are aware of it, and we are working with, traffic and parking, with mobility, just to make it safer for everybody. But if you ever have an issue, you can reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to talk to you more about it.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Dimitri.
Hello, is everybody hear me?
Yep.
I would like to express a concern about erosion of zoning laws in Massachusetts, in Somerville. And I think that it comes without regard that Somerville is #1 most densely populated municipality in New England, number 19 most densely populated municipality in the whole United States, after like various districts of New York, Los Angeles, and Miami. And it's this erosion. And for example, the most recent push for basically scrapping the mandates of parking. So the thing is, so without it, it is basically obvious that developers will make units from this. Okay, so there will be more units, more people, more density. But as a result, we'll get a concrete jungle without green space. And this basically, also, there are certain loopholes in zoning laws, for example, lot coverages, which developers very, very nicely work around. For example, building mushroom buildings, which overhangs, and it turns out the lot coverage can allow this. So we'll have this nice mushroom buildings, maximizing the number of units, a lot of small units. Well, you can say, what's wrong with that? Well, the problem is that comes at the detriment of anybody who lives in the city, in the forms of increased traffic, in the form of all ramifications of increased density. It's not a good thing. But also the upsides of this are questionable, because the hope is that, well, we'll put more units on the market, the prices will go down. Well, they don't. And it was written recent articles in the Harvard Business Review that the market is broken because there is a very, very big demand for units from the top wealthy investors. And until that demand is not satisfied, the rest, like 90% of population, won't get affordable housing. So the risk and reward here needs to be really imbalanced. We can squeeze every single inch out of all of our green spaces, and it won't move a needle much in this regard. So I want us to be considerate that it also goes against the existing residents that basically will get their values eroded, and these are middle class. So if you define middle class as just your average homeowner, this is what it is, and it only exacerbates inequality. So we also need to plan long term. This current housing crunch has cycles of economic cycle, right? These are years, what are counting years. But the building that is constructed will be here for decades, 100 years. How will it look like in 20 years, 40 years? Will people frown at, oh, this mushroom building was built during that crazy era where it just was build, 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 build? That's this kind of proactive thinking is what I see not happening, especially the Inspection Services Division, which issue the permits with obvious violations of zoning ordinance, and there was no recourse. So I brought some case against one of them, and the Zoning Board of Appeals just says, nah, it's okay. So they basically, there is no recourse. And that's concerning, is the erosion of zoning laws, which really undermines the legitimacy of construction, and it's troubling me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dimitri, for your question. There were a lot of things that you talked about, so I'm going to do some high level and then see if there's anybody else that can add anything in here, but just high level. So the city of Somerville does have a strategic plan. It is called Summer Visions. It was published in 2012, the very first one. It was a 3-year community process. It was updated, in the last 2 years. It was updated again. Still, are we on the track that we want to be as a community. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people who were involved in this. And part of our strategic plan is that the community has agreed that we want to grow. We want to add population. So when the strategic plan first started a decade ago, we were at about 76,000 people, and we're at about 82,000 people. As we're starting to grow, the question is, what part of this, or where can we grow? And if you look at the Summer Visions map and our zoning map, we said that the underutilized sections of the city are in the eastern half of the city. So that is why you're seeing a lot of work around the Union Square area, on the other side of the tracks in the Boynton neighborhood, over in Assembly Square, over in the Brick Bottom area, which is their neighborhood plan was just approved, and eventually over there'll be planning for Inner Belt. But the idea is that we were going to grow, that we were going to add population, that we are going to add density. And the other sort of big concept is that everybody agreed that cities are dynamic. They're not static. They're ever evolving. So the idea is that we sort of evolve with the times. Now, this is 2024. And if we look back on the last 15 years or so, what has been happening in the greater Boston area is that there has been job creation in Boston and in Cambridge. You can see how the Seaport District, all the buildings that have gone up there, all the construction that has gone up there. In Cambridge, you can see it around Kendall, and as it works its way east over to Cambridge Crossing and that area, there's a lot of commercial that has come in there. The amount of housing, though, in that time has not matched the amount of new job creation. So we have a housing shortage. The housing shortage is because of our ratio of jobs to housing that has caused the housing shortage in Massachusetts, but it's also nationwide. So you have all the jobs in the inner core and everybody, but not enough housing to support them. So the pressure goes out, and it goes out, and it goes out further. And as everybody is looking for housing until they're going out towards Worcester, they're going to New Hampshire, going to Rhode Island to find housing. The city of Somerville during this 12-year, this is 24, this 12-year period or 15-year period when we started our strategic planning had made the public sort of understanding, getting community input and resources that, again, we will add population. We cannot build ourselves out in Somerville only of the 200,000 housing unit shortage alone, because as we said, we have about 33,000 housing units. We need a regional support. So I think it's important to sort of set the context of what's happening in the region. So at the same time, over the last 35 years, we've been advocating for the Green Line to come in. So it opened. That's wonderful. And so that gives us another ability to say, so what does that do for us? How do people move around? And I'm going to say that 8 out of 10 cars on the roads in Somerville do not stop at a business or do not stop at a resident. They are just passing through to go to Boston or Cambridge, to go to work. So, we ask ourselves, if we're this cut-through, pass-through community, how do we make things safe for the people who live here how do we create more options for the people who live here to move around and greenways to move around? And that's by rebuilding our sidewalks and our streetscapes and giving people dedicated bike lanes or dedicated bus lanes to move in and out of the city. Because if you have 40 people on a bus, that's not 40 cars queuing up to try to commute through the city. So around the subway transit nodes, as we call them, there's a half-mile buffer that said, or as the council put through, and there was a parking study about it, that people would, that there would be no new parking on site. So what does that mean? Excuse me. There can be parking on site, but that's up to the developer to decide whether they want to build it. However, residents cannot purchase parking permits to add to the streets. The idea is they will use public transit because that's why they're in an urban area, is because they want to be closer. They want the walkability. We hear constantly, and I heard it with 3 individuals today, the reason they moved to Somerville 5-6 years ago is because of the walkability, that they could get around and they could see themselves then retiring here. So I'll let Brad talk more about, sort of the parking piece, but that's sort of the concept at the higher level. We're not looking to add more cars to the street. And then you talk about the concrete jungles. I know that I've been the lead when I was a city councilor to put the most progressive, zoning in for making sure that our natural environment, as development happens on development projects, required to have a green store, are incentivized to have pavers, add trees, add pollinators. We have added more green space in the last decade, although small, in very creative ways, by requiring that large developments, even though they are on private property, they are open to the public. So they're called privately owned public spaces. A big example of that is if you're in Assembly and you go over to the Mass General Brigham's building, you see that big green space that is there underneath their sort of rectangular archway. And that is open to the public all the time. And even though that is private property. So we are actually trying to do the opposite of getting rid of those concrete jungles. So that's it sort of at a high level. I will look to pivot a little to Brad, if you could add a little bit about the parking that I didn't go into detail about, but thank you.
Mayor, thanks. I think you covered a lot of important ground there. Dimitri, heard your comments and questions and took notes on them. Just so you know, the city's Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Department is also on this meeting and is also taking notes, and we will look forward to following up. I think it's important to recognize that we've got a lot of city staff from a lot of city departments who work really hard to make sure that new real estate development and investment in our city is consistent with our objectives of safety, equity, sustainability, and sense of place. And so a lot of development, as the mayor noted, involves creating great new public plazas and parks, great new streetscapes and green stormwater infrastructure, wide accessible sidewalks and traffic calming. but there's always more work to be done. So thank you again for advocacy to help us continue to grow. In terms of your questions about parking regulations, there's an active process, as you know, that is administered by our city's planning board and our city council. They are accepting public comments like yours right now. So that's the best way to continue to make your voice heard, is through those public processes. And it sounds like you're well aware of them. So again, thanks for your comments, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next up, we have Andy. And before Andy unmutes, I just want to note for everyone that if you think of a question later, you don't feel like raising your hand right now, anything like that, please email your concern to cm@somervillema.gov, and we'll be sure to get that over to the appropriate department. I also want to flag that it's 8:20. We're coming up on the 8:30 end time for this, so we'll take one or two more questions before we close. Andy, go ahead. Sorry, I should have said that before I called on you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to start off by just saying thank you for holding this event virtually. I'm sitting here with my two cats. My partner just took a step out to take a smoke break, but this is actually the first time he's been able to attend. Kind of attending activities like this in person brings up a lot of anxiety for him. And for the first time, he actually got to hear what happens at these meetings. So I'm super happy that you're having this virtually. And I guess the question that I have is, I know tonight's presentation and a lot of the conversation has been about infrastructure, concerns with infrastructure. Personally, as a Somerville resident for the past 9.5 years, my biggest concern living in the city has been the cost of housing and how unaffordable it is. I am a professional, right? I am a white collar professional. I have had the great opportunity to be stable in my housing, but I know many of my friends who are not have really struggled to either stay here or have had to move away. And I was actually very excited, Mayor Ballantyne, when you made statements in support of social housing at the state level. And I was actually wondering, I have not been able to follow that topic very well with how busy I am, but I wanted to hear if there was any updates about that effort, because I think it's one really great strategy to try to keep people in Somerville at all income levels, not just the people who can afford to stay.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy, for your question. I agree with you. Housing and the cost of housing affordability is something that I personally have been working. I have totally understood personally, but also been working on for nearly 25 years. Specific to your question, I do not have an update at this moment, except so what's come out of the State House. But what I can say is that my team and I are always looking to use every tool possible to help with creating more affordable housing and trying to balance sort of both sides of the coins, not only the cost of the housing, but also the revenue generation to be able to provide more housing. So it could be whatever ordinances or local laws that we can use that we call ordinances at the local level, whatever we can advocate for at the state level, whatever we can incentivize developers to do with our local laws, our local zoning laws, so density bonuses and so forth. So we'll continue to work on everything possible in that avenue. And thank you for bringing it up, because affordability is a huge issue in Somerville and the region.
Mayor, if I could speak for 1 second on that and just add, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Ellen Schachter. I'm the director of the City of Somerville's Office of Housing Stability, and I'm really, really glad to hear your question. It's obviously for my office, it's the #1 issue the mayor has really supported the growth of our office and has really contributed to our ability to try to do a whole variety of things around affordability. The one thing I wanted to make sure you do know is really excitingly in the Affordable Homes Act at the State House, there is now a $50 million social housing pilot. We don't know exactly where that's going to go, but it's a really exciting opportunity to explore mixed income housing as a strategy towards, increasing affordability. And I did just want to let you know a few moments of other things that we're trying to do and would love to connect separately if that's helpful. We recently had rolled out a rent stabilization ordinance, knowing that ultimately as we price people out of the city, that it's really, really difficult ultimately to manage that and to prevent displacement without thinking about a reasonable balance between rents and profits and affordability for our residents. We have had a really large rental assistance program and have committed over $4.3 million since COVID to helping people stay in their homes. None of this is enough, but I did just want you to know that at the state level, we're working on a whole variety of initiatives, some of which were funded and some of which were passed in the Affordable Homes Act, which was the largest bond bill ever in the state of Massachusetts. But there's, again, as always, and I've heard Brad say this a couple of times tonight, there's always a lot more work to do. So I did just want you to know how we're excited about that possibility about social housing, but always open to new ideas and to sharing with you what is happening. And I encourage you to sign on to our newsletter to get some reports from what the Office of Housing Stability is doing. So that's somervillema.gov/OHS. And thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you so much, Ellen. We are coming up on time. We do have one final question, but I think we can make it happen. Judy?
Hi, thanks for taking my question. As I've watched all these changes come to Somerville, wondering who makes these decisions that were made 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I've lived here since 1985, and all of this, change is hard, but I recognize that if we can just save one life through traffic calming, those charts were pretty impressive. But I would just like to talk about unintended consequences. And I'll talk of two and then I'll go because I know there isn't much time. First of all, I've been reading about floating bus stations, bus stops that we're also excited about here, but they're making them illegal in England because they're very unsafe for blind people who get off the bus and try to get to the sidewalk when speeding bicycles and now motorized bicycles zoom by. So that's number one that we don't think about. The other thing is traffic calming, adding all these circles and particularly speed bumps, which are showing up everywhere. The city's very proud of it. And if it saves one life, it's certainly worth it. But which life do we want to save? I've had to accompany people in ambulances who have had heart attacks. And if you want to know how many minutes it takes now to get to the closest hospital, I don't even want to tell you, but it is very hard to save someone right now. But it seems like those aren't the lives that we're trying to save. So thank you for listening and have a nice night.
Thank you, Judy, for your question. And thank you for being thoughtful about asking us to think about unintended consequences. I will say that our Director of Mobility, Brad, I'm going to look to you again, and how your team approaches, planning for these things and also planning for potentially keeping up to date with what's happening around the country and around the world to mitigate unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Judy, thanks for your comments and questions. I've taken notes and I look forward to following up on them. We do appreciate we do approach this work with great humility, understanding that there are and can be unintended consequences, and we work really, really hard to minimize and mitigate those. An example of some of the tension that you are describing could be about crosstown travel for Cataldo Ambulance, for example, for Somerville Fire Department, for Somerville Police Department. Folks probably know that we have a certain type of emergency traffic signal override technology that kind of freezes the red light and green light cycles at our signalized intersections to allow first responders to get through. The technology is good, but it's not good enough. And data that we examine shows that our first responders actually lose a lot of time at those traffic signals. So right now we're working to bring in next generation technology using GPS and better software to detect those vehicles come in earlier and freeze those green lights earlier. The current systems require line of sight, and they're not quite as predictable or reliable as we want. So those types of solutions are being integrated into our street projects going forward. And that's an example of how we try to identify and mitigate any unintended consequences. So again, your point is well taken, and we are listening with humility and committed continuing to work on all of these issues. So thanks again for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you so much, Brad. It is 8:31, so we are going to wrap up. We're going to let the interpreters go. I just would like to say thank you so much to all of the city staff here tonight. Thank you so much to our interpreters for all of the hard work, and thank you so much to everyone who attended. It's much appreciated. I just want to remind everyone that if you have any comments or questions that we didn't get to, you can submit them to cm@somervillema.gov, and that these slides will be uploaded this week to somervillema.gov/community meetings. So thank you all so much.